So let me show you guys how to more or less put this in. The screen is going to be a little all over the place, so what I recommend is a little bit of tape. Just fold it over on itself. This also, you want to shave it down as much as possible, you know, with the flush cutters, any little pins here. So all I'm doing is just taking some tape, folding it over. Just to kind of hold it in place and make it easier for you to line things up. Be careful inserting the screen. You don't want to damage it. That might not work quite how I wanted, so keep the tape on there. The screen ribbon is kind of flexible, so you can put it down, because we have to kind of angle it just because of the button. So once it's in there with the button, you can push it down. I have to adjust the screen a little bit. It's crooked. Okay. Still crooked. Alright, that's looking better. Okay. Now if you notice, because of the way the screen is and the ribbon connector, the board is not really like flush. You'll see just slightly angled down if you look over there. So when this is all set, ready to go, it's, you know, you're not going to have always like the best contact maybe for some of the buttons. That's something that kind of sucks just because of the screen, which is why sometimes it might be good to use the dome buttons, but if not, not a problem, because I built one with it without the dome buttons. So when this is all set ready to go, of course you're going to have the pie here, and you have to make a cutout for the SD card, as well as make one down here for the USB-C. You're going to be hot gluing like the edges, like over here on the sides, so it's going to stay kind of angled, but the controls will work fine. I guess I'm going to have to make a jig for this as well, so we have a good idea where the USB-C is, but from where it is pushing down on it, you can see it's pretty close to the edge, maybe a little bit up, so you'll have to probably mark it by eye unless I have a guide. So it looks like it's about here, and I'd say about here. So there's my rough draft of where I think it is. Pretty sure it's going to be fine. Looking at it from inside and then that way, I could see it's pretty decent. It'll work. Alright, we're going to go over the the cutting of the USB socket at the bottom here and the SD card at the top. So I already did the cut. Not the most perfect or pretty, but this is what I marked off earlier, as seen earlier in the video. I marked that off, but I kind of went a little extreme, but doing it this way you guys get to see for my mistakes, how to not make them for you. So the way I had this set up, so it's going to be pushed as far in as possible at the bottom here. And as you can see, the USB kind of sits low, you know. So where I marked it off was pretty good. It's just that you have to kind of really get low here and not go as high. So, you know, since it's very DIY, it's not the end of the world. You can get the USB in there. Now for the SD, you're gonna need the Raspberry Pi in there, and also we didn't do the cutout for the power switch. Now the power switch, you're gonna have to solder the board on first before you put the switch on, just because you can easily, if the switch is soldered on, it can put pressure and lift this off and rip off the pads. We don't want that, because then that's going to be such a pain to get on there. So, turn on my soldering iron real quick. Get the board I showed off earlier, which is this little thing right here. So basically the 3 holes line up with these pads, almost like the similar type of soldering here with the GPIO on the Raspberry Pi to these pads here. So these are going to act as anchor points as well. So I'm going to line it up, and then I'm going to put some solder in there. This is not the ideal tip, but it should be able to go in there. I made these good size where it's fine. It's not going to be like the GPIO, which is a much smaller hole. Probably good to just add a little bit of solder to one. Place this over it so it kind of lines up, and then you can just heat it up. Alright, that's on there. Again, not the ideal tip for this. The ideal would be the one used for the GPIO soldering. Same method. Stick it in a hole, hold it there a few seconds, pull up real quick. Hopefully it'll drop. We'll do a quick continuity test after on the switchboard here. Make sure there's continuity. But this switch, which is basically this switch. This is the one I'm going to be putting in there since I already have the switch on here. But I will show how to solder that. But as you can see, this sticks out almost as much as the button here. So it's definitely going to hit the side of the shell. And you can cause damage to the board if you force it in there. So the plan is to just use this and mark off more or less where it's going to be. So the switch body is almost the same size as this board right here. So using our Sharpie, I'm going to mark off more or less where it's going to be and the height of the body, so it's almost the same height as this switch. So I'd say the slot is probably here. That looks about right to me. So the way to do this is either with a drill a couple holes and file it, or if you have that Dremel bit, you could do it that way. Just kind of got to eyeball it on the outside. If you put it up to light, you should be able to probably see right through the plastic and kind of trace it, which is what I'm about to do right now. Yeah, I can see it. I know it's off camera, but I guess it's about right here. I went a little too far. So this is what it's going to look like, minus that little notch of where the slot should be. Might have to tweak it a little bit as you put it in there to make, to be sure the switch actuator, the slide mechanism, moves freely in there. It's not going to get pinched or anything like that. It's good when you have the switch on hand. After you cut this out, you can put the switch and just, even from the inside or the outside without the board, and see if it pops through, if you have any play, or if it's too tight, you might have to take a little bit more. So I'm going to go get that right now. The switch, as well as I'll Dremel it right here on the screen so you guys see how that works. So the switch comes in the kit. I can kind of see more or less the thickness. It's almost the same as I've marked it. So now it's going to get a little loud. You're going to see this bad boy in action. I want to take out the buttons. Let's put them off to the side. Again, you want control. You want to go in slowly and then just go left and right. Try to it can jump if you're not careful. So you got to go real slow and take it easy. Alright, there we go. Now let's see how that fits. Fits pretty well. Okay. Now let's take the one I have already with the buttons on there. Let's see how that lines up. I could see that that's not lining up all that well. More than likely I'm going to have to trim down a little further. With this Dremel, you want to make sure you're holding it real good, and you would just shaving, go little by little, left and right. With a little finagle got in there, but now I could see that I might have to clean up the sides of the board a little bit more, just because the switch sticks out a little here, and it's causing a little bit of hard difficulty pushing it all the way down. But it's in there. So definitely could be moved a little lower. So when you get these shells and you kind of mark it off, if they're about the same place as mine, just move it down a hair. It's on and off, no problem. It's just not perfect, but nothing is. Okay, so I'm going to put the parts in here along with the screen, just so I can get the height for the SD card. And we're going to do the exact same thing we just did over here. Mark it off. We're going to guesstimate where it's going to go. Good thing about this connector, it's the flip top. I've actually had on the prototypes, which is this one here, the connector is the one you slide in and out. Much more complicated and hard to use that one. So the kits have the good version. Also, here are the dome buttons. These again are optional, so you'll have to get them yourself. They add a little bit of height, not much. They're super thin, but you can use most buttons, even these membranes, and it'll give you some good response. So if you're having issues maybe with controls and you've done what you can, maybe get these. This will probably make things much more responsive. I could see the switch has to go down a little further, just a hair, and a little down this way. Because as I put pressure, I could see it's flexing. You can probably see that in the camera. See that? It's flexing. You don't want that, because you want this as flush as possible. Otherwise, the buttons gonna be hard to make contact. So I'm gonna make a little bit more trim in there, but it should be okay for me to put a little bit of pressure, just so I can mark off where the SD card is. So the SD card, we wanted a good size slot. Okay. So that's where it's going to be, and I'm going to probably go down at the width of the height of the socket to the Pi PCB. So now just be careful taking it out so you don't damage the switch. I am going to try to make some jigs so this becomes easier, so people don't screw up as much or guesswork as much as I am. Again, same thing, I'm going to point this up to the light, copy the mark. That looks about right. So that's what we got. While I'm at it, I'm going to push this down slightly and a little down further. I know it's going to increase the size of the hole, but what can you do? It's big and ugly, but it does the job. Alright, I think that one actually came out pretty good. Use my nifty tool to kind of clean it out. Okay, let's see how that looks now. Yeah, much better, not putting as much pressure on the switch. And if you look here, you can see the SD slot. You can get the card in and out without much issue. It's not crazy huge, but I'm sure a smaller bit could probably do it better. This is where a file might come in handy. If you get a nice flat file, you can just go across and open it up. I think this is alright. That's ugly, but what can we do about it? Okay, so we got all the ports cut out. USB-C, switch, mode button, menu button, and SD card. So now this is where we would hook up the speaker. The speaker is going to have to sit on the back. There's no way to get it in the front. I know it's got the grill marks, but you can't really use them. And it's going to add a bulge over here where it's going to pick up the board, and then it's not going to sit flush, and the buttons are not going to be as close as they should be. Might even have to go a little further down for the switch. Again, I'm likely going to have a jig, so you guys will have a better time just marking this. I spoke to my friend, and he's done a bunch of these, and pretty much the shells are almost the same in terms of location. So it'll be good to have something universal where you can just kind of put over this, mark that, mark this, this, as well as that. So the end product for you is probably going to be a lot nicer than it is for me. So the next step is we have to solder the LR board right here, and that means you're going to have to do a hole somewhere here on the back so you can place the board over here. So this is going to sit this way, which is going to line up the holes exactly where the wires are going to be, the solder holes. So there's two boards. There's this one and this one. You're probably going to need a button of some kind, maybe even the leftover L&R that we put off to the side, these longer buttons here. You can use those. So I'm going to have a jig for this as well, so hopefully you guys can easily make holes the first time. Since I don't have that, I'm going to be winging it, which you should not be doing for any of these projects. Follow the guides, and if there's tools and drill guides and all that, use them. So since we're going to put it this way, the easiest way I've seen is to kind of put it this way, get it more in line, or more or less where it's supposed to be. Use the Sharpie again. I'm just going to mark the center of the button here on the plastic shell. That's all I'm doing. So now I'm going to grab a drill and get more or less the width of these buttons, because why not use them? We can use that. That'll be like, they'll push down on this. This is a soft membrane, and so is this, so it's not going to be like a clicky hard type unless you go with the other buttons. But these are spaced, they're spaced about the same thing too. Yep, they're spaced equally, so whatever drill holes for this one will also work on this one. Okay, so the drill bit that I found that seems to work, it's a good size. It gives it a little bit of clearance so the button's not going to get jammed up on the plastic. Is a 3/16. Metric people, I'll have, okay. always want to be careful drilling. Watch your fingers back there. You don't put a lot of force. Alright, so we got our holes here. Let's see if the board lines up. Alright, not too bad. They're a little off. They're not perfectly centered. Well, that's because the board itself is not perfectly centered. These you can trim, of course. So that sits pretty much like that. You push the button, pushes it down. Pretty good. So after we get the wires soldered on there, you kind of want to put the board more or less like this. Gonna have to hot glue it. It's at an angle, as you can see. You want to make sure this is like flush up against there, so these buttons have some bounce and stay firm. Since this is going to be this way, we're going to drill a hole here. Using the same drill bit, you can use whatever. Okay, so now, I don't really need to show you guys how to solder some wires, but basically the 3 wires go from here through the hole into these 3 holes. And then this obviously goes over this. You close it. The battery, I am including one. I think it's a decent height where it's not going to protrude in or affect the back cover here. Similar to this one. This one's a little thicker, but this is what I had on hand when I was messing around and getting the software ready. So again, you're going to have the speaker here. It's kind of going to sit like this. I know it's on top of this a little bit, but it shouldn't be that much of an issue, to be honest with you. Again, yeah, this battery is a little thick compared to the one that I'm sending. This one that I'm sending is much thinner than this. But if you do want to use a thicker battery, you can always drill the hole here and push the wire through, and you can hide the battery back here. Not interfere a little with the board unless you push up the drill holes. But again, as I said, with the battery that's included in the kit, it should fit without issue here. It's the same one my friend's been using in his build, so I know for a fact it will fit. And with that, we would just hot glue, put some on the sides here, here, the sides, and towards the top here. And that should be pretty much it for this build. Then to close it up, oh, almost forgot. So we want to use this for these holes for screws for mounting, so we're going to have to drill. So we're going to have to drill through here to pop out the other side. So you're going to need a real thin drill bit to go through here, and then open it up just slightly so you can put a screw that will go straight down, and the screw is going to bite into that. I didn't include screws with the kit, but I think any M3 screw or even M2.5 2.5 millimeter or 3 millimeter screw should go in no problem. 5/64. You can go up, I guess, to the next one, which is 3/32. But this one is like perfect. It'll go in there and open it up Well, so now we just go straight into it. Okay, I think that's it right there. So here's our screw holes. So now you get a screw that's big enough to go through here and bite into the walls of the hole of that shaft, and you should be good. I'll probably have a good size in the description. I don't have one right here on camera that I'm testing, but I will test them, so I'll put all the information, which parts, which screws, where to get them, the drill bit for the Dremel, and where to get the dome buttons if you decide to go that route. Also going to have the drill guides. Now that I have a good idea where things are laid out on this shell, it'll be much easier for the end user, you, where to mark things and drill things. So hopefully this hasn't been so long-winded and boring and you learned something in the process. Going to be a lot of editing because this thing's gone a little off track in terms of how much time I wanted to do everything, and it just dragged out, so I had to show everybody more or less how to do this, how to do that. Now the switch, before I end it all, when you go to solder it, it lays flat on the PCB, but if you notice, the legs stick out. So you have to kind of bend them down a little. Sometimes just put it on the flat surface and put a little bit of pressure. Now I could see, especially in the camera, you should be able to see it, that now it's making contact with the pads. So that's what we want. We want it to make contact with the pads, and then you just add solder to it. Test continuity. So I hope to see people putting their own together and posting all over the place. Make sure you tag me. I want to see how yours turned out. And going forward, there's a few things that are going to change for future revisions, such as this right here, which should be simpler. This button is kind of short. It should have been this one. So I'll post a link to people who want to swap it out with the longer button, where you can get it. Most of these things you can get from Mouser or eBay or anything like that. Alright, thanks for watching.